if it was just like the products of people like aging to hundreds of years, and we've never really seen a person live that long before, but we wouldn't see kids that look like Neanderthals too, right? And so you asked how you can tell they're different. Well, on the right here, do you see that skull?
Mm-hmm.
On the left, can you tell which one is a modern human and which one's Neanderthal? Can you guess?
I would say the one on the left is the modern.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? And so what's going on here? Can you tell me what are the things you see different between these two skulls?
Well, I almost don't want to count the length of the cranium.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it's a lot longer. You're right, but that is one of the things.
But you'll see that. I mean, I'm the guy, you know, because of my Fringe Pop channel. I've read all the literature about, you know, King Tut and his family and all the different, you know, genetic and other abnormalities that
so you can see. I didn't put it up here, but you can see that there is actually a lot of variation. Like one of the weird things about how Homo sapiens are defined, which is a little bit racist, is that we kind of use a European skull to define what Homo sapiens is. Well, I mean, I say it's a little bit racist right now because I don't think it's intentionally that way now, but it was very racist in the past, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the variation, there are Homo sapiens. So, for example, Aborigines in Australia, native Australians, will have like a wider skull, I mean, like a longer skull, but nothing that approaches this, actually. What you would see is that Aborigines look really close to the European in a skull, but quite different from this. So this
if you put some of Tut's family up here on the screen, they would have the elongated feature, but they would lack some of the other ones.
Yeah. And it turns out Neanderthals all have these features, and they're all very prominent too.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some other things you see? So one was the length, but also, I mean, it's the shape too, right? This is like a football shape, and this is more like a soccer ball.
Yeah, the angle of the jaw is obviously different.
Yeah, so they didn't have a chin. So you can see here it's just flat and it goes down like that. But then the Homo sapiens, you got this chin like this, right?
Yeah. It's thicker. You know, I don't know, right here the cheekbone is much thicker.
Yeah. So this is a lot thicker. It's because they were actually at a much stronger bite than we would have had. So there's a muscle that is what allows you to chew right here. We have it here too, but there's this progressive narrowing of this channel where that muscle goes. And if you go back farther in our lineage, I mean, if you go all the way to chimpanzees, you see there's actually a mohawk bone right here that the muscle would connect to, which gives them a really, really strong bite compared to us. Because the muscle would connect here and up there. They don't have that because they've actually smoothed it out, but you can still see it's a lot broader there. Anything else you see?
Well, the eyebrows are thicker.
Yeah, and this is another example where you do see people alive today that are not Neanderthals that will have a bump. Whoops, sorry. Will have a bump like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never on the bone side. It might look big from the outside, but it's never on the bone side quite as big as this.
Mm-hmm.
So you never really see a human skull that has a bump that big, at least a modern human skull, I should say, a Homo sapien. Now, there are people today that have Neanderthal genes in them, and some of those genes actually might influence skull shape. So if you did find a person that had a bigger than normal bump, it might actually be because of Neanderthal genes they have.
I was going to say that the skull sutures are different, or at least I can discern them on the left. I can't really discern much of them on the right, except for the one that would be behind the ear.
Yeah, well, in general, what's going on is that there's just a lot more. They're just a lot more robust, thicker bones here. The other thing you can see too is that the nose is very different. They had a much wider nose. You can see that better if we turn them. But there's just a lot of differences here. It's kind of in this place where in artificial intelligence we'd say that it was in the uncanny valley, where it's human, but not within the normal range of human. So it looks a little bit weird to us.
What would a gorilla skull look like in comparison to this, or one of the great apes?
Well, this would look far more like a human than a gorilla skull. So gorillas have big fangs that come down here. They have that bone mohawk that I told you about that goes up like this, like a ridge. And they have a far flatter forehead. So you can see here that another thing here is that the forehead is really sloped. That's part of like the whole football shape versus the soccer ball shape. But for apes, it's more and more. It just kind of goes straight back like that. And you can kind of see a pretty smooth transition from things that look like this to looking more like apes as you look back in our lineage. But Neanderthals are, among the most recent, if not the most recent. Now we don't know of any Neanderthals that are alive right now. We think they all died out about 40,000 years ago. But they look really different. And what they first discovered was a piece of the skull that was like the top part kind of cut off here. So they saw these really prominent ridges, and they saw that it had a different slope, and they saw that it was just a lot larger. Now, one theory that was out there that I learned was that maybe these are just people who really lived to a very, very, very old age or had some sort of disease. The thing that doesn't really work about that is we see so many of them all over the place, so it doesn't really make sense as a disease in that sense. Also, they weren't like localized in one particular area. They're all over Europe. And if some people think that Denisovans were basically the Asian Neanderthal, so then they're also all over Asia. The other thing that's really important about it is that we see kids too. We actually have children Neanderthals that we see in the fossil record. And so if it was just like the products of people like aging to hundreds of years, and we've never really seen a person live that long before, but we wouldn't see kids that look like Neanderthals too, right? So they're kind of in this spot where we're not really sure what to make of them. And people, when they first started looking at them, they were really trying to figure it out. One of the other weird things about them is this bone here. Do you see this? That's the hyoid bone. If you might be able to feel yours. You might have thought it was only cartilage, but it's like a bone that coroners will really examine to see if a person is strangled to death, because that'll break when you get strangled, for example. It's also right by your Adam's apple. And here's one of the weird things about the hyoid bone. Right now on Earth, the only species on Earth that has a hyoid are humans. And the reason why that's important is it turns out that bone is pretty important for speech.
Okay, yeah.
So animals out there can make all sorts of noises, but humans have a really high control of our ability to speak, which ends up becoming really important for language, right? And hyoid is really important for that. Like if your hyoid bone is broken, it becomes a lot harder to talk. Now, it turns out that Neanderthals have hyoid bones too. So that's been one of the things that made people think that they had a complex language.